Good evening. How's everybody?
Good, thank you. Hope you
Good.
are.
I see everybody's still joining in. I hope everybody's well. Dr. Same, welcome. Glad to have you with us tonight.
Sir.
Hey, Connie.
Good evening.
All right. So we're at our last class tonight. Congratulations, everybody making it through. As I said, I'm glad y'all are better students than I am instructor, but I've had a great time this summer. I hope that you learned something. Again, I want to thank Dr. Sain, our resident expert, for being with us. I think it's very important that we have somebody who's in the role that brings the day-to-day with us all the time. And I'm very glad that he's been with us this summer. He's added a lot of value to our class, and I thank you for that. I wanted to go ahead and announce that, you know, your registration is automatic unless you have an AR hold. You shouldn't have an academic hold at this point. So your registration will automatically roll over. Our town hall for legacy students will be Monday, August 28th. Classes start back the previous week, sometime the week of the 21st. Your classes they'll be posted. I'll meet with the new students that first Monday, as I always do, like I did with y'all last semester. As you know, the second Monday I meet with the legacies. I will have your drop dead dates. You know, we're finishing up next semester, and so 2 weeks prior, the Monday 2 weeks prior to the end of the semester, all of your evidence, 6 evidences are due. The following Monday, your portfolio is due. Let's talk a little bit about graduation. Graduation will be on Friday, December 15th. I'm sorry that it's a school day, but it is. We'll do 2 ceremonies that day. The 9 o'clock ceremony is the university ceremony. Now, at that ceremony, you will stand as a group and be recognized. Your name will not be called. You will not cross the stage at the university ceremony. However, at the 1 o'clock ceremony, same day, we'll have the College of Ed ceremony where you will come across the stage as an individual. You will have your name called, and I will be standing there, and I will put your hood on you. Hopefully I'll work with you before we get to that point. I'll be with my doctoral students, but I'll come slipping over and make sure that you have the hood on the proper arm and turned the proper way, so I don't put it on upside down and strangle you. But I will put your hood on you as you cross the stage again at the 1 o'clock College of Ed ceremony. We'd love to see you there for both of them. But if you want to know which one you get hooded at, it would be the 1 o'clock College of Ed. You do process in at the 9 o'clock ceremony. You do stand as a group and be recognized, but you don't cross the stage at the 9 o'clock. Only the doctorals cross the stage at that ceremony. If you're traveling from afar, I would recommend looking for a hotel in Gaffney, South Carolina. There is only one hotel in Boiling Springs. It has been taken over by a major chain, and the prices have gone crazy. And there's only one hotel. And there's a lot of people understanding that the December ceremony catches the summer completers as well. And so we'll have quite a large group just ourselves. We'll have over 100. We have 62 finishing this summer, and then we'll have that many or more finishing in the fall. So we'll have a big group, and then Even though the university's off cycle for undergraduates, they usually have a good many. So the American, Americin, American is the only hotel in Bowling Springs, and the ones in Shelby are rather expensive as well. So to get to Bowling Springs, you need to go 74 through Shelby and come into Bowling Springs on 150, or you can come 150 from up south, 85 to 150 in Gaffney, South Carolina. So the point of the exercise is Gaffney and Shelby are equidistant from the campus, even though you cross the line into South Carolina to go down to Gaffney. But Gaffney generally has better restaurants and better hotel choices in terms of a variety of those. So if you're looking to come in and you don't want to have to, again, you got to be on campus. If you're coming for the early one, you got to be there at 8, and then the event is at 9. It's over about 10:30. You got to wait till 1 o'clock. About 12:30, we'll process back in. We generally go right back in LYCC where the big one is. That's not been determined yet, but if you're coming in, if you're not coming for the early one, you don't have to be there at about 12:30. So it's up to you what you want to do. We'd love to see you at both, but I understand the economic realities of taking a whole day off work and having to pay for a hotel as well. But that's up to you. You'll get information from the registrar on ordering your caps and gowns. There is a standard cap and gown order, and your hood comes with it. So make sure that you see that. They order from Jostens, I believe. So that's the graduation information that I have. It's always subject to change, but it's Friday, December 15th, 9 o'clock, Gardner Webb ceremony, 1 o'clock, College of Ed ceremony. Now, last year we had food in between. We didn't have much, and they ran out, so they ordered pizzas. So I don't know what they're going to do this time, but that was the deal last time. So if you've not been to the campus, it would be a good opportunity to come and visit with us and see it. Now, again, it's 15 miles from nowhere. There is one stoplight in Bowling Springs right in front of college, and that is it. And so there's no there's no public transportation. There's no bus, train, airplane. There's one small hotel. So plan accordingly. We're in the middle of nowhere. All right, so that's graduation. That's again the 28th Monday is the Legacy Town Hall. Again, I'll go over all the dates where everything has to be due. I've checked everybody's competency folio that has requested comments. Those are going well. A reminder on competencies, you don't have to have one for each semester. Just try to get 21. Read the directions. Some of them you put 2 in this semester because some of them have one from the OMA and one from the skip. And some had like cap and SOP, and you might not have done those this semester. But just try to make sure that you're not behind. All of y'all are in good shape. I don't have any concern that you won't be able to complete in the fall if you complete this summer. So I do have one student I need to talk to, but I'll do that later. All right. Who's going to start first? Who hadn't been first? And let's get this thing rolling tonight. I'm interested to see what you got to say about this. Now, as we're loading, please remember, you should have been able to pull things that you learned from the app cell, PLCs, data dives, AppTel, teacher observations, walkthroughs, OMA, master schedule. Dr. Griffin Jordan reminded him again last night. This is a perfect example of not using, the rationale of federal programs first. You should be able to pull previous case studies, basic ed. I mean, these basic ed parents are claiming that their basic ed kids are not getting, they're not getting that basic ed that Leandro guaranteed them. That was from case study 3. We see negligence, misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance like from case study. That was from case study 3. We saw the lack of their Leandro light from case study 2, case study 1. We saw teachers doing whatever they wanted to do. No cohesive plan in terms of how to present instruction. So you should have seen the previous case studies. You should have seen all the previous evidences. You should see that marketing plan that you developed in the skip where you have those parent academic meetings. This would be a perfect opportunity to do that. So all of those elements you should have been able to see in this one. Hopefully you will share that with us. We'll talk about Marzano's best practices. Is this really cooperative learning? We'll talk about those 5 federal programs you had to audit for the OMA. Is AIG one of those? Are their IEPs being, are their program needs being met? If they're teaching the other kids, I mean, think about all the things that we've talked about this semester and last semester, all the different evidences, all the case studies. You should see elements and things that you can plug into this case from all of them. All right, who's first? And let's go. I'll stop my video so it'll help you share the screen. Who's going to share their screen?
If
We
no
can
one
go
wants to
first.
go, I'm gonna say if no one wants to go, group 3 will go.
Go. Don't be bashful.
All right. Let me pull up group 3. All right, can everyone see our screen?
We can.
All right, so this is case study 4, inclusive education, success for all or success for some. The group members is Ms. Thornton, Ms. Brandon, Ms. Davis, and myself. All right, for a quick overview, we had the principal. She was approached by a group of 3rd grade parents about a meeting to express concerns about their child's progress. The principal met with the parents and they requested that she speaks with Ms. Sylvia, the teacher in 3A. The parents believe that she spends too much time with the special needs students in her classroom and their students are not making as much progress as the students in 3B. Principal Gina ends up talking with Mr. Ortez, their technical coordinator, about the concerns and asks that he looks into the matter. In the meantime, Principal Eugenia meets with Sylvia. Sylvia believes that teachers should help EC students, but Sergio, another teacher, believes that it's the job of the support specialists. After having these discussions with Sylvia, the principal decides to meet with everyone. Both of the grade levels. And then we go into our next slide.
Okay, so how might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? So, first, during a clinical experience, the principal as the LEA should know the students with the IEPs. The principal should review the IEPs with the EC facilitator, the EC academic coach, to know which students are receiving additional support and how much time each student should have. The principal can do walkthroughs, observations, attend PLC meetings, and speak with admin leaders to know exactly how much additional support each child needs. Also, they need to revisit the inclusion policy she does with her school and cover with the staff and the teachers to look over the schedule and the staff and the time allotted for each child. So at this point, the principal should have a master schedule that refers to the amount of time each child has been deemed for their disability or their need. You could also meet with the concerned parents to discuss exactly what approach they're doing. The last thing was thought that the approach used would depend on the severity of the disability. So inclusion versus mainstream. So inclusion is when a student, regardless of their ability, is participating with members of the general ed education classroom. Where mainstream students, if they meet the criteria, they're in the classroom for a particular time, given the same instruction as the general ed population. So the principal is responsible in this case for providing a sound basic education for all students. But from this case, it appears that the general ed population is being neglected by fault of the classroom teacher, but she's trying to cater to the special ed needs students in the classroom.
So there are several things that principal should look at moving forward. Her scheduling, as far as the master scheduling, she should have met with her EC resource teachers, and her EC contact and anybody else that she needed to reach out to in that department, just to make sure that those schedulings were created first. She also needs to be, as LEA, needs to be in the IEP meetings and making sure that accommodations are being met and in place for those students. When the parents brought the information to her and she was shocked, we kind of discussed that she probably is not doing walkthroughs and observations the way she's supposed to, that she was not aware that this was happening in her building, and she could not provide any response to those parents when they brought that to her. We also discussed that there needs to be some professional development for the teachers to understand how to differentiate instruction for all of their students. And then the role of the principal to make sure that all students are getting what they need in order to be successful. Is one point of view more correct than the other? No, the bottom line is that the law is not being followed. The focus needs to be on getting all the students what they need, and also to make sure that teachers have adequate training and support and resources available to them.
What kind of collaboration from the children's family might the principal and the teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program, encourage an appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all the students at school? So, as we stated before, an inclusive education is when it's a push-in model where the EC teacher comes in a regular general ed class and support the students in the classroom. So they need to establish a positive, safe environment and build relationships with the students and the families, and also make sure that the teacher or teachers and staff that are involved have additional training. So everybody's on one accord. Consistent instruction across the grade level and have routines. So it was stated that the teacher was, giving more attention to the special needs students than the general ed population. Also, the teacher or the school may do presentations in the classrooms, lectures, videos, and activities that support and help all the students that are involved, and have an open communication and well-informed parents and guardians that are involved in general ed and special ed families. Also, to celebrate the diversity of the students. There's some things that they can do.
So as an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might this tech coordinator do to integrate and create harmony amongst these teachers? Sorry, let me turn my camera on. So of course, using text to speech and speech to text. Audiobooks, of course, is great. Epic, of course, is free. C-pens are also a great accommodation in the classroom. It looks just like a pen, and you go over the text with the pen and it will read it out loud. The student can use like a small earbud to listen to it. Voice Dream Reader is great for PDFs. If you upload a PDF, it will read it to your student. Mod Math uses digital graph paper, so you could use that for math, of course, graphic organizers. Beeline Reader is great for students who have difficulty with reading because you can change your text colors. Scanners, of course, to scan your documents and upload them to whatever platform it is that you're using into the classroom. And then, of course, it can read it to them. Of course, text highlighters. And My Homework is also great because it is a visual planner. And a lot of times we have students that have goals for organization, and that is a great one. Here we need to make sure that, you know, a conversation between the team members is really taking place to make sure there's an understanding that everyone is here to provide the same level of instruction and standards so the students can meet those standards. And putting all of these things in place could allow all students better access to the curriculum.
What actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experience they have observed? So we said family night events would be a great thing, just like we pulled from the skip that we just did. But in this case, we would do it more geared towards the IEG, and Gen Ed, so all parents could see how that inclusion model looked, that their children are still receiving the support and what they need. The IEP students are still getting the minutes they need. They're still in their least respective environments, that the IEG are still getting the higher levels and the advanced academics that they need, and also just provide take-home materials and different things for the parents when they do come for family night. We also mentioned student-led conferences so that the students can share their learning with their parents in their own words and let them explain their thinking and the work that they've created. Newsletters, emails, communication app, social media platforms. And again, all of these are things that we kind of thought of and we pulled from the skip. Next is the four ethical part. Well, I can't say that. The first one is justice. And we said that it was unjust treatment in all categories. She violated FERPA, VAPA, with so many different things that she violated. Leandro, they did not have a sound basic education, especially because students were teaching students and she was just focused on her EC learners. They did not follow the federal laws, policies, so there were no justice for any of the students in this case. Professionally, there's FERPA. She discussed other students' score and the performances with the parents. She was not aware of what was happening in her building. She delegated the wrong staff member. She delegated the technical person, and that was out of his scope of practice.
Yes.
For critique, we said she violated the ability for a sound basic education. We could tell that there was no prior planning, scheduling was poor. She didn't stick to the federal, state, and local laws and rules when she was thinking about the scheduling. Of course, her AIG, EC, Gen Ed students, they weren't in consideration when she was scheduling, and her teachers weren't trained, because if this was a new student that was coming, a new teacher coming to her building and she transferred in, she should have made sure that her training was up to date with the other staff members. And as far as care, we said it appeared that the principal did not care because she was not present in the classroom. She didn't even thought it to do the walkthroughs or the observations to make sure that each child in her school was receiving that sound basic education that they deserve. She did not even care enough to go into the classroom even after she met with the parents to see what was happening in Miss Sylvia's classroom. It didn't appear that she had a good relationship or any collaboration with the other teachers or staff members.
So when we look at non-feasance, the principal did not perform her walkthroughs or observations to ensure inclusion was actually taking place. Was not aware if the children were meeting the requirements of their IEP, and of course sent the technical person, which of course was not in his field. Malfeasance was of course sending him to check in what was happening in the classroom. Of course, sitting with the special ed students and not with the others. IEP laws were not followed, so that is legally not acceptable. And misfeasance, of course, students teaching other students, and of course, those general education students not getting what they needed in the classroom. And inclusion, of course, here was not done correctly.
So in conclusion, in this case, the principal lacked the required knowledge of meeting the needs of all students, gen ed, AIG, and IEP. Her job is to manage the school and to delegate and to ensure that all the laws and regulations are followed within her school. From how Ms. Sylvia's class was set up, she needs to work on her scheduling. It did not appear that her master schedule was completed with the federal, state, and local laws and the guidelines in mind. If so, the IEP students would not be lumped in that one class, and the advanced student would not be teaching others and just completing workbooks. Cooperative learning is acceptable, but in this case, it wasn't that. It was students teaching students, not cooperative learning.
Excellent.
She has the power to delegate tasks, and she did that well. She just delegated to the wrong person. When she gave Ishmael the task, it was out of his scope of practice, and she has to know the strengths of each staff member and delegate accordingly and making sure that it's in their scope of practice. She just saw him. It just appears that she saw him and just say, okay, go check on this. I just came to this meeting, go see what's going on. And that's not how you delegate a task. You want to delegate it to the individuals that it's within their scope to actually carry it out successfully. And finally, she was not aware of what was taking place in her classrooms. This meant that she was not performing her walkthroughs, and as the principal, she is responsible for everything that takes place within that school. So she needs to ensure that the resource teacher is in the class if they're doing inclusions. She needs to make sure that the resource teacher is planning with the regular ed, just to make sure that inclusion is taking place. And as the principal, it just seems like she is setting herself up for a heap of legal issues and termination if she doesn't get this together. And that's all for us.
Well, that was just marvelous. Dr. Sane, that was great. I applaud you. Dr. Sane, your feedback. You're the expert in this area.
Yeah, that was good. So I three key takeaways here. You guys referenced PD. And one of the things that, even though the principal was at fault here, one of the things that really sticks out to me is that the teachers did not understand what the assignment was in terms of what support services their students need. And that is so true in our classrooms today. Most teachers believe that inclusion just means EC kids should sit there until the teacher has time to pull them in a small group and re-instruct them with the instruction. That is not what inclusion is. The resources that Melissa showed you are all resources that support the standards, not support a different level of instruction. And teachers as well as administrators are liable if they do not follow that IEP. So again, that was a big concern there, but great job, Melissa, on the resources, because all of your resources in your group listed are resources that support scaffolding to standards, which is what inclusion is. And the last thing that you guys talked about was delegating the responsibility to someone who actually has knowledge in EC. So here's my task to you. If anything happens in your building to this level where EC is involved and it becomes a major concern, the number one person you delegate is yourself. As the principal, as the leader of the building, and get people, if you don't have an EC background, get people from your district office or somebody, your assistant principals involved, because it can turn on a dime. And I know I've told you guys, but I can speak to this. I'm currently in a lawsuit from 5 years ago where I did handle it. I did delegate it. I had a lot of experience in special education, but still there are so many loopholes. You cannot afford to just pass the buck to who's over a warm body when you're dealing with EC issues like that. So those were the key things that stood out to me, but spot on. Every recommendation you made is textbook. You might have had a couple of EC people on your team. I'm not sure.
That would be me.
Yeah, I thought so. That was really good.
Yeah. It
All
was.
right, thank you. I want to just, you hit all the points that I have written down, but I want to reiterate these again, because even as a principal or assistant principal who is not well versed, these are things that even if you get help, make sure that you don't do. Don't talk about other people's kids. We talked about that one already with case study 3. Don't ever talk about other people's kids, whether they're EC, doesn't matter. Just don't talk about other people's kids. Don't have EC only parent meetings. That's a FERPA violation. I was glad to see that you said you need to we're going to skip them like we did this semester. In our skip, we're going to have that parent meeting, that parent academic meeting. I told you early in the semester. We have plenty of times when parents come to our campus, but they're there for a ball game or a step contest or the talent show or whatever. That won't help you. The whole notion of the skip is something academic as our long-term plan, our long-term goal. Help us help you, help your child. And that's why I love, Angela mentioned the take-home. You should always have take-home materials for every one of those meetings that you have. Write that down. If you can't remember it, write it down. Every time you have one of these parent academic meetings, you should have something that you can send home with parents that they can help their kids with. Let us help you help your child. Help us help you help your child. That's the notion there. Kids teaching kids never works. I don't care if they're EC, AIG, doesn't matter. Never have kids teach kids. That's just a constant. That's not cooperative learning. Some people think it is. Please remember, AIG is special POPs. We forget that too many times. It is a special POPs federal program. I love the list that Melissa had. Now, Dr. Sane may disagree with this statement, but I see it from the college end, and that we can't get people to go into instructional technology for school anymore. They are the most misused people on our campuses. They're fixing printers, and if they can fix the printer, can you fix the copy machine? They're working on computer. They're doing that. We're sending them to do things that they should be supporting instruction. They should be scaffolding that instruction. But if you're lucky enough to have a technology facilitator, instructional technology person, know how to use them correctly, they can really help you or they can really hurt you. That's up to you. But I love the take-home materials. Now, my final thing is this about the principal in this one. Now, I'm going to use me as a bad example because I'm pretty good at that. Every principal, now understand the word that I'm using here. I'm going to spell it for you. I don't mean your skin. Hide, H-I-D-E. Every principal has a hide. Where you go, that's your safe place. When you don't want to deal with other things, mine was going to I'd go watch them dig a hole and put a new scoreboard in. I'd go to the gym. I'd go to the cafeteria. Some people, it's the classroom. Some principals don't ever want to deal with irate parents or discipline, so they go hide in the classroom. Next semester, they're going to work with you very specifically on knowing your blind spots, knowing yourself, Jahari's window, and figuring out your strengths and your leadership style. But what you've got to overcome most, I'm telling you, this is number one. in terms of that kind of thing, knowing yourself, is you got to overcome your proclivity to retreat to your safe space, your hide when things get tough. Obviously, this principal just could not go to a classroom. You know, she had retreated to her office or somewhere else. She just couldn't go. She just couldn't make herself go to the room. You've got to know and understand what your hide is, and so that not so that you can know where to go, but so that you can fight against that urge and make sure that you do all the things that you're supposed to do. We all have a hide. Dr. Griffin Jordan last night said hers was student services. Since she was a former counselor, she hung out down at the counseling office when things got tough. You can't do that, folks. You just can't do that. You got to get out and you got to be in the office when you need to be there. You got to be in the rooms. You got to be everywhere. But you know, and that's not natural. Your natural is to find your safe space, your comfort zone, what I refer to as your high. All right. Second team, let's get it rolling here tonight.
I'll go next.
I saw Connie's hand. She was primed and ready. She already had it up.
Well, good evening, everyone. So we're team 1. So myself, Tara, Crystal, and Paul. This will be the order of presentation. So I will discuss first the overview. Okay, so it's the overview was already discussed by the previous team. So it is a local public school, a preschool and elementary public school located in a small semi-rural area with 28 teachers, 2 administrators, 3 specialists. They are serving 300 students from, and 60% was in the disadvantaged family, and there's a parent association. The concern was with general education student not progressing academically due to the teacher, Miss Sylvia, spending too much time with the special needs students and instructed students, advanced students, to help kids in the integration program and in Sylvia's other subject areas. So completing assignments in the other subject areas. So I will start with definition of few terms in special education. So there's a lot, but I will just focus on inclusion, least restricted environment, and idea. So inclusion involves supporting students with disabilities through individual learning goals, accommodations, and modifications so they can access the general education curriculum in the general education classroom. So inclusion means there's a support. So inclusion means these are special education students who receives support, either a shadow or a special education teacher that is pushing in the general education classroom to collaborate with the general education teacher to make modifications and accommodations in the general education classroom. So there should be person that is in charge of the inclusion. So it should be part of the IEP. And least restrictive environment is, this is based on the IDEA section 612 to the maximum extent appropriate. Children with disabilities, including children in public and private school institutions or other care facilities, be educated who are not educated in the general education classroom or with the non-disabled peers. So with the general education peers, grade level peers, or age level peers. So as much as possible, whenever they can appropriate for the child to be in the least restrictive environment, they should be included in the general education classroom with levels of support. Okay, so IDEA is amended in 2004, a legislation that ensures students with disability are provided with free, appropriate public education that is tailored to their individual needs. So the law intends that the degree of inclusion be given by the students' needs is determined by the IEP team and not by the district or school's convenience or parents' wishes. So it's not the parents' wishes, it's not the convenience of the district because they do not want to provide the service like homeschooling and providing paraprofessionals or having another person to serve that child. So it is actually based on the academic, the social, and functional and behavior needs of a child. So that should be determined by the IEP team. Tara will answer question number 1 and 2. Crystal will answer questions 3 and 4, and Paul will be discussing 5 and 6 and the ethical concerns.
Okay, so question number 1, how might the principal approach this and future meetings with their teachers? And is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? So when we met on Monday and we discussed everything, we were all in agreement that the principal must know what is transpiring within the classroom. So therefore, consistent walkthroughs and observations are critical components for the principal as the instructional leader in order to know the constituents of her school and to be aware of what is actually occurring in the classroom and beyond the classroom. Using the high flyers to teach the kids, other kids is not a good practice, and it definitely has legal implications. So for future meetings with the teachers, you know, as far as the principal is concerned, classroom walkthroughs would certainly make the principal aware of this unacceptable practice and would therefore the situation occurring would have been addressed immediately. The principal must also address the importance of the FERPA law with the staff, reiterating that other children cannot be discussed with parents. And principals must clearly outline these roles, the roles of all the teachers. With regards to choosing one approach over the other, I think that a uniform approach does create consistency. And so therefore everyone needs to be on the same page. Question 2, what is the path that Eugenia should take? I think the first step that she must take is she needs to get out of her office and into the classroom. Has she done that? May have had a different outcome in this case study. The principal must do a formal observation of what's transpiring in response to the formal parent complaint. She had a formal complaint. She needs to do a formal walkthrough observation, a formal observation. And actually the principal should have already done informal walkthrough observations, but however, now that she has the complaint, she's now legally required to do this formal observation. Next, the principal must conduct a post-conference with the teacher, and during this post-conference, she needs to set up a plan to formalize what the teacher needs to do differently. And then finally, once this plan has been formalized, it's imperative that she follow up with the teacher, and follow up with the teacher. It must take place in order to gauge the teacher's implementation of this plan that's been formalized during the post-op conference in her classroom. Thank you.
All right, hold on. Whoops, sorry. All right, so it says it's one point of view more correct than the other and why. So I gave the 2 point of views that was given in the case study. It was going to be the one to improve the learning. The most critical factor is to guarantee that the circular coverage of all study plans and programs. And then the second was that the learning process of students with special needs ought to be overseen by the interrogation programs team. And then it says it's not the regular classroom's teacher's responsibility. So from those 2 points, the students in the classroom spend most of their time with their non-disabled peers in the regular ed setting than they do in the EC or in the integrative program teams with the specialists. The teachers have system-wide PDs where they get exposed to the curriculum that is offered for the district and or the school to teach and deliver instruction to all. During the time spent with the EC teachers, the students get taught at the levels they are based on their IEP to reach the goals that will help them reach accuracy with standards and skills to improve or support the general education classroom. The students with disabilities, the EC, the AIG, need certified or licensed teacher to teach all inclusive, not no matter their ethnicity, social, economic status, and or gender. With question 4, we came up with ways where you can collaborate. So we have the monthly family curriculum nights, where there will be staff that will represent all areas in the school for different resources, those takeaways that were mentioned earlier. I talked about parent universities that we do at in our school system in Cumberland County, where we take and teach the parents once a month based on different needs and areas within our school. So I mentioned that to my team to have those parent universities where parents and families can come out. Also, during the SIT meetings, parents are always welcome to join our SIT meetings just so they can be aware of what's going on within our building. Volunteer, and I sit with a cleared background check in different classrooms to see how and what learning looks like in the classrooms at the school, so they won't be closed off to, or will be more exposed to what's happening in the building, and they won't have to go off of he say, she say, or word of mouth, because they've been in the building and they know that learning is taking place and that students aren't learning or being taught by other students. Professional development, like inclusion, MTSS, IEP, 504s, about FERPA and AIG. And then I said also staff attend conferences. I was able to attend a conference last month, and it was very informative to give different ideas on how to offer different resources with our students and staff.
Okay, so our next question is, what can the technical coordinator do to integrate and create harmony among the teachers? The first thing to understand is this, okay? We in the case study, we are seeing teachers from 2 or 3 different grade levels who have a different approach to inclusion in the students. But really, harmony amongst the teachers is not what the concern is. What needs to be the number one concern is that the students' needs are met. And so what we have to do is, if Ismail is going to be the right person to do this, maybe looking at it as like an instructional coach type of role, what should be done is that these teachers should all be educated on how the right approach to inclusion in the classroom must be. And this can only be done through professional development. Bring in each of the grade level teachers in separate groups like might normally happen on a weekly basis, or have maybe one meeting where everyone is together and go through the process, explaining what an inclusive classroom must be. What should it look like? How should it function? The fact that students should not be teaching other students. If there are other resources that have to be necessary, promote the idea. Come see me. We can work on this together. Then after that, what can be done is that you continue with walkthroughs, gather the data, take a look and see how these classrooms are being evolved through the process. And then at each point, use the data to create further professional development sessions to kind of fine tune and refine the approach of all the teachers and all the grade levels, so that all the students are getting the needs met that they must have, whether it be the general population, EC children, whatever the case may be. All right, then the last question: what actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? First things first is that she needs to engage the parents in conversations to hear what their expectations are, but keeping in mind that she cannot violate FERPA. She cannot discuss other students with other parents, but she can at least gather information from the parents. What are their expectations? She can use that information along with professional development to continue to guide the development of the inclusive classroom with all of the teachers and all of the grade levels. I mean, it really comes down to, as we've talked about before, gathering data, using that data to continually refine and change the way that the classrooms look and function. That way the students are getting absolutely everything that they deserve. Then at that point, once you've got everything about to the point where you think it's looking good, then you can start to think about telling parents, yeah, if you'd like to come and sit for a little bit, see what's happening. We're excited about the way that all the students are learning and the way that we're meeting everybody's needs. Then you can do it at that point. Then maybe gather continued feedback from the parents. If they are still unhappy, find out what they're unhappy about. Use that information to, again, continue the professional development. If there's one thing that I learned in this current occupation and the occupation that I had before becoming a teacher, is that you never stop learning. You never stop refining your methods and how you approach your job. And in this case, it's also how you approach, making sure that all the children are getting what they need, meeting their IEPs, meeting their IE4, 504s, and so forth. So then as we finish up taking a look at the legal and ethical concerns, first of all, we take a look at the justice category, plain and simple: fairness, equity, justice. In this case, that is not being met. Okay, all the EC children are not getting their fair, just education that they are owed under the law. And by using other children to help teach them, that's not being fair to those other children either, because they are then missing out on their chance to get that fair education as well. When we take a look at some of the things under care, loyalty and trust, the bottom line is that we as administrators are being entrusted with the education of all the children in our building. And so we have to make sure that we are meeting that trust, the trust of the parents, that we are providing that education to them, no matter what the level is, no matter how the methods must go. We must meet the guidelines, the laws, and make sure that all the children are getting that fair education. Along with that, concern and connection. You take a look at it, clearly the principal is not in connection with the rest of the building. She's not aware of what's going on in the classroom. She's not aware of what the teachers are doing in those classrooms, really, until it's too late. I mean, you're already at a point in this case study where you're looking at those legal proceedings. From the critique category, we can take a look at human rights. Again, all children are entitled to that fair education. So we can fall on, the right to be educated, to have that good education to perform a base for adulthood and so forth. And then on the professional side, where's the accountability? Okay, clearly the principal is not holding the teachers at this point accountable for what they are doing. Again, until it's too late, until parents have come to them with major concerns. The legal consequences, we've talked about that all throughout this case study. At each point, there are federal programs and laws that are being violated, and those are lawsuits, legal proceedings that are just waiting to happen. All it takes is the right parent at the right moment to pick up the phone and call the right lawyer. And next thing you know, you've got the school in trouble, you've got the district in trouble, and you personally are in trouble as well. Promoting social justice, again, ensuring that the students' needs are being met as required by the laws, by their IEPs, and by their 504s. And ultimately, what is in the best interest of the students? I continue to repeat the same thing. Students have a right to that fair and equitable education. And if you are providing this type of scenario where you've got just, teachers doing all sorts of different things in there, that is not in the best interest of all of the students.
All right. Excellent.
All right.
Excellent. Excellent. Dr. Sane?
So again, great work there. Just some of the things that stand out. And Paul, you referenced this at the very end, and it was referenced throughout the presentation. But we talk a lot about accountability, that principals and administrators have to hold teachers accountable. So I want to talk quickly about the reality of that. On paper, and a lot of research says that we should really know every single thing that goes on in every classroom in our building, and that is not possible. But even though we can't do that, there are still systems we can put in place to hold everyone accountable. And the number one thing is that you know what's going on in your building. First of all, you know the schedules, you know who teaches your inclusion classes. And then when you do walkthroughs, you are specifically looking for those big pie in the sky accountability features. So, here's a little bit of a trick. When my district forced that we must be instructional leaders and we knew the standards, I didn't have the time to do that every day. What I did have the time to do is make sure that when I walked through, I observed my special populations. I made sure that we were we were teaching ethically. I went through with the perspective that I was covering my rear and the rear of my school, because if the school goes under for practices that may look neglectful in the public, every kid in that school suffers. So again, the word accountability is so important there. And again, I'm not saying that instructional leadership is not important. However, instructional leadership is not going to get you sued. This stuff will get you sued. So instructional leadership is going to come secondhand. You're going to have the right people to delegate and support you in that. But just again, making sure that you know what's going on in your building, because there are going to be parents that come to you on a daily basis and talk about this. This is nothing that you're going to have EC in your face all the time, from parents who believe their kids aren't getting the right services to parents who believe that their regular ed kids are getting neglected. So this cannot be more relatable of what you're going to see. But as soon as you have doubt in your response to a parent, they are going to attack you. So if you don't know the schedules, or if you respond in the case of this principal, oh, I didn't know that, you have to be confident. But then that comes back to knowing what's going on in your building and having the expectations that all your teachers know that you mean business when it comes to following those expectations. Sorry, I didn't mean to get a little bit of a soapbox there, but
No.
you're gonna get a lot of district people telling you that your primary focus should be instructional leadership, and it is important, but it is not. It can't be your number one priority, because you're human. You're one person.
Mhm. Our recently retired chief of police at Gardner-Webb University's name was Barry Johnson, and I just loved Barry. He was kind of a no-nonsense guy. And out near the tennis courts, we've got kind of a roundabout without a stop sign out there. So what Barry bought, had it made look like a big road sign, and I love it because it's what we're talking about here tonight. And it simply says, "Pay attention." I love that. I mean, Barry's a to the point kind of guy. I love Barry, but you got to pay attention, folks. You got to know that's what, I'm kind of simple. Like you sum it up, you got to pay attention. You got to pay attention to stuff that matters. Yes, when I work with those EDCI ladies this fall, the doctoral ladies in EDCI, I'll tell them, you got to forget pretty much everything you've learned so far, because being a principal's not got anything to do with instructional leadership as you know it, where you go stay in the classrooms all day. You'd love to be able to do that, but you better be paying attention to what's going on around your building, or you won't last very long. So the things that I heard that time, kudos to Tara. We talked about it. They talked about it last semester, and I want to reiterate. You know that you have a schedule for formal observations of teachers. BTs get so many, ILTs, all that stuff. But as Tara pointed out, all that goes out the window when you get a parent complaint. You got to go do a formal, and that will jam you up as well. It's hard enough to get all your observations in, especially now with all the turnover and all the young teachers in your building that you got to do so many on. That'll jam you up already. And then when parents come and you get jammed up on these, you won't, not just for that reason, but please remember, you have a legal obligation now to go and do that. Tara pointed that out. Excellent job on that one, Tara. Now, Paul said, we run schools for kids, not teachers. It's sad but true tale. I love teachers, but remember, we're not running the building for them. And then one of the things he talked about, parent visits. I had an old professor C.D. Bryant, I loved him. He was such a good man. But what he said about that was, just don't get on center stage until you have a center stage act. If you invite parents in and they see the circus that's going on, it'll only be worse. Don't think just getting parents to come in will be a good thing. It'll be a bad thing if they come in and see a 3-alarm fire going off in the classroom. That's not good. So make sure you got it cleaned up, like Paul said, you got it looking somewhat respectable before you let them come in. That's a great point, Paul. Now I have an overall perspective here, and then I'm going to ask Dr. Sain a question. All right, my perspective is to the question that we all have to ask: why do some regular ed teachers think or believe that they bear no responsibility for the education of exceptional children? Let me say that again. Why do some teachers believe, to the core of their being, that's not my kid, that's not my problem, I'm reg ed? Why do they believe that? Well, here's Dale's answer to that. And I'm the only one in the room old enough that never went to school with a special ed kid. You know that, right? I never went to school with a special ed kid. That's how old I am. We've only been in the special ed business for 50 years. And, you know, the first law was in 73. The actual law that let them come to school was in 75. But here's kind of, from my perspective, from my years in the business. The first 10 years of EC was just absolutely criminal, what we did to kids. I taught during that period of time. Every kid was self-contained. Even LD kids were in the classroom by themselves all day long. The high school that I taught at, we didn't even let them in the main building. We put a bunch of trailers outside, and they never got to go in the main building. It was criminal. First 10 years, how we treated them. And then the next 10 years, it was just terrible. I was principal during then. It improved from criminal to terrible. And then it got bad. And by the time I was in the central office, it was awful. It was awful. And now it's just okay now. It's taken 50 years to get to okay in exceptional children. But I can tell you horror stories from back in my day, folks, that somebody ought to be in prison over. Seriously. And so the notion here is we've not been very good at this for a long period of time. And teachers, even they're not old enough like me to remember when we self-contained everybody and maybe out in a trailer somewhere, a mobile. But they pine for those days. That was the good old days of teaching. That was before standardized testing. That was before accountability, before any of that stuff came along. That was right before the basic ed plan. And there was no standards. You never got evaluated. I taught at this high school for 5 years. You know how many formal observations I had in 5 years? That would be 0. I never got observed. Never had a professional growth plan. Never taught an EC kid. They all stayed out in trailers. And people would like to go back to that. No standardized testing, just the SAT. People have nostalgia for that time, but I'm telling you, it wasn't a picnic. We didn't make anything teaching school. You had to have 2 or 3 jobs, but also how badly we treated kids. If you love kids, I'd take them no matter if they take somebody else's class. They'd just stay with me. We can learn something in the science lab. It's okay. Come stay with me. If I'm pretty hard-hearted, but I'm telling you, we treated kids terribly, criminals back in those days. Please let teachers know, or as you're an administrator, we don't ever want to go back to those days again. Those were not the good old days, folks. They were not. So that's it. Now, my question to Dr. Sain, I want his take on this one. Can you say, as a school, as a principal, as a LEA rep, in an IEP meeting or, to EC parents, that we can't afford that? Can you say we can't afford that?
Absolutely not. That is one of those questions where if you don't know how to answer it, you table the meeting. Remember how
That's
I said
exactly right.
And get somebody in there who can answer that. But if you say no, you've set yourself up for a lawsuit and then paying for whatever you said no to. Whereas you can make compromises in terms of if you have parent agreement, because the district may have some you can piecemeal some support, which wouldn't cost you money. But as soon as you say no, you are going to have to provide whatever you said no to.
Mm-hmm. If you give that excuse that you can't afford it, remember, we talked about in the Leandro case, all these different pots of money, and the federal money follows federal kids in these programs. And even if you don't have the money, you're not legally allowed to say we can't afford that. So that's one of those things that again, those landmines, FERPA, all the things that Paul pointed out, all that stuff, all that FERPA stuff. Yes, but one of the things that you throw up your hands because you're frustrated sometime with parents, and you say, well, we just can't afford that. That's just unreasonable. Don't do that. Don't let them poke you into that. Now, you remember, we took 16 weekly activities and we boiled them down into 6 bigger ones this summer. But I put a takeaway on every one of those every time. I had a takeaway what you're supposed to do from that. I didn't just have you out there stumbling around in the dark. And if you'll remember, my takeaway on IEP meetings, the one thing you should have took away, if you've never been to one before or don't know anything about them, is that the decisions have to be collaborative. The decisions have to be collaborative. And Melissa just pointed out a corollary to we can't afford that is don't say we don't provide that service. That's the other side of that coin. That's exactly right, Melissa. Never say never. And when I point out that all IEP team decisions have to be collaborative with the parents, some people think, well, that's just kind of minor. No, that's the number one problem that you have in IEP meetings. That's it. If you can get a consensus, you've won. I don't care what it is. If you can get a consensus in IEP meeting, consider that a win. Take it and run. Take the win. Take the victory. Very good. All right. Next group.
Okay, we'll go next.
All right, Ruby.
4. Thank you.
Ruby, while you're pulling that up, can Dr. Lamb, let me just say one thing to what you said about why there are some teachers who don't think that they should teach EC kids. It goes back to what my soapbox with Paul's part is there is inconsistencies with accountability in buildings. And you're going to enter an age in school administration where teachers have a lot of leverage over you because there are a lot of positions that are vacant.
Yeah.
And then teachers are going to use the comment, well, I'll quit, because they can, and they can go. And I'm in Kentucky next week going to a district that's giving $20,000 bonuses for people who come to teach. They have a lot of leverage. So you have, but again, you can't let that negate what your purpose is. And so the consistency with accountability will put people on the same page.
Yeah. Legally, it's better to have nobody than a bad body. I hate to say that, but legally, you can't let people break the law and it just because you're afraid they're going to leave, because then you're on the hook for that. That's exactly right. That's a great point. That's a great point, Dr. Slane. And Melissa chimed in the chat as well that teachers will say, we weren't trained for that, or I didn't go to school for that. You went to school to teach kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I will throw in something too. What I've seen a lot of times is a lot of teachers mean well, they just don't have an understanding of what special education is and what the continuum of services is and what the disability categories are. Some teachers legitimately want to learn about what is a specific learning disability and how does that impact their education. Doesn't mean that they can't learn. A lot of times teachers might assume that because they just don't know.
Yeah. That goes back to that PD, that professional growth plan. You ought to be doing that to every teacher every year, making sure they all know what it is. And whatever model that we pick, that everybody's got to be professional development. I mean, that's that school-wide professional growth plan. That's what you do. Those are the things that you really got to make sure you make that plan work for you. That's a great point, Kathleen. Teachers, don't know, but it's your job to make sure they do that. All right.
Sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. I'm trying to go back. So good evening, everyone. We are group 4, going over inclusive education success for our students, not for some. And it does include Letitia Steele and Yolanda Tyler.
And of course, we're just starting off with just the case study, with the whole summary. And we have Eugenia, 44 years old, served as principal for 3 years at a rural local public school with 28 teachers, 2 head administrators, and 3 specialists. Eugenia received a parent concern during a local parent association meeting. The parents shared concerns of their student not progressing due to Sylvia, which is a 3rd grade teacher, spending more time with the exceptional children, EC students, and forgetting about the needs of the other students. Eugenia was unaware of the actions which were taking place in the classroom. Eugenia met with Ishmael, her technical coordinator, and asked him to look into how other teachers are resolving this issue in the classrooms while she conferenced with Sylvia. Eugenia met with Sylvia, and Sylvia, being the veteran teacher, agreed that she was teaching to the EC students whom she felt had the most difficulties and wanted to assure that they were learning. Sylvia felt the general education students was still receiving written and oral instruction, and that collaboration with both population of students was best, especially integrating the kids helping kids approach. Classroom teachers were split on deciding which approach they thought was best for implementation regarding inclusion versus mainstream education. After Ishmael reported back to Eugenia of his findings, Eugenia scheduled a meeting with teachers to clear the air and lessen the tension from the 2 approaches. Starting off with the legal and ethical concerns, first was inclusion, which is a term which expresses commitment to education each child to the maximum extent appropriate in the school and classroom he or she would be otherwise attend. It involves bringing the support services to the child rather than moving the child to the services. It requires only that the child will benefit from being in the class rather than having to keep up with the other students. This also can falls up under IDEA. The Individual with Disability Education Act, as amended in 2004, does not require inclusion. Instead, the law requires that children with disabilities be educated in the least restrictive environment appropriate to meet with their unique needs. And the IDEA indicates that the least restrictive environment analysis will begin with placement in the regular education classroom. Also, was discovered about FERPA, which is the Family Education Act and Privacy Act. It is a federal law that protects the privacy of student education records. The law applies to all students that receives funds under an applicable program of the U.S. Department of Education. And as we already discussed, federal money follows the kids. So going over some of these legal and ethical concerns, we also want to go to least restrictive environment, which the IDA defines, well, LRE, to the maximum extent of appropriate children with disabilities, including children in public or private institutions or other care facilities, are educated with children who are not disabled, and special classes, separate schooling, and other removal of children with disabilities from the regular educational environment occurs only when the nature of severity of the disability of a child is such that education in regular classes with the use of supplementary aids and services cannot be achieved satisfactorily. Then we move on to the principal's role, and kind of looking at Eugenia and just a few of the places that she touched. One of them is C, which was to improve instruction and community spirit. The principal shall give suggestions to teachers for the improvement of the instruction. Bless Eugenia's heart. I think she just forgot all about this. Yeah, I don't even think she provided any suggestions at all. I think she was just still confused on what to do next. But yes, next was to establish school improvement teams. Each school year, the principal shall ensure that a school improvement team is established under GS 115C -105.27, the purpose of the developing, reviewing, and revising a school improvement plan. Lastly, it was to evaluate certified employees and develop action plans. And as she was going through, well, when she needed to go through with a formal observation and walkthrough, this was a time that she could have been able to help Sylvia to develop a plan. If not even Sylvia, either one of her other teachers in the building, but each school year, the principal assigned to a low performing school that has not received an assistance team shall provide for the evaluation of the certified employees assigned to the school. The principal also shall develop develop action plans as provided and shall monitor an employee's progress under an action plan. Number one, how might the principal approach this and future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? The answer is no, but the principal should do face-to-face meetings. She does need to get out there. She needs to be present. You can sit there and say that you're present, but guess what? You have to be involved as well. Don't just show your face and stand up in a hallway and think that that's your presence, like a big bully or something, but you have to be involved. She needs to go into those classrooms. She should meet with those parents. Again, meeting with the parents. But while she's meeting with the parents, she needs to make sure and be mindful when it comes to FERPA about what is she speaking about, what students she's speaking about, the education practices and implementation, so on and so forth. Hold teachers accountable. Principals need to be visible within their buildings, know what is going on, and not just coordinate a job. Teachers know their roles and duties and expectations. Teachers should make known laws and regulations of EC, i.e. FERPA, professional development, including like inclusion and MTSS, IEPs. Eugenia definitely needs to bring those into her school and offer those to her teachers. They need to have meetings where the teachers and principal analyze school data to assure student improvement and progress. Where is the assessment after the teacher gives the workbook assignments? She's just going to give the workbooks and there's no assessment, there's nothing. But then she claims that, hey, they're doing just fine, as she could observe. So then lastly is, how is the teacher gauging the mastery? You're giving the workbook, but then what's next? Okay. Next will be, Letitia, are you on here?
Yeah. Yep,
Okay.
I am. All right. Question number 2. What is the path that Eugenia should take? Definitely she should familiarize herself with IDEA laws and the student IEP progress, because on those IEPs, it would definitely tell you what the goals of that student is and what instruction, it will gear that person to teaching the student what they need based off those IEP goals. Observe the teacher's inclusive practices in the classroom. Schedule a meeting with teacher to address parent concerns. Allow the teacher to share her practices, develop and discuss action plans. Ensure that teachers' lesson plans are aligned to pace, rigor, and expectations to the state standards. That way all students are meeting what their need to be. Meet with Ishmael and other pertinent stakeholders. And staff meeting professional development on inclusion practices, having a staff meeting to talk about the different types of inclusion practices for the classroom. Go ahead, Ruby, next. Is one point of view more correct than the other? Why? Inclusion versus pullout. One is not more correct than the other. Again, student IEPs are the goals and it should be followed. That was in both. If inclusion practices are being utilized, specialists is still supposed to provide those services for the students as outlined in their IEP. Inclusion and pullout services align with assuring EC students are educated in the least restrictive environment, and principals should assure that this policy is being upheld in their schools. Next. What kind of collaboration from the children's families might the principal and the teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program, encourage an appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all the students at their school? So in our group, we talked about having a parent night. And within that parent night, maybe have a simulation of a day in a classroom where they can see like what that looks like in person, what that would look like in person with inclusive kids, with gen ed kids as in the classroom as well, what that will look like. Teacher explains their strategies to address all needs, small group instruction, differentiated instruction, and then MTSS, which is definitely targeted instruction. and I put there's a little visual there to talk about MTSS, where you get intensified support, supplemental support, and universal support. And a lot of schools are using that MTS framework in their schools. Whole group session where the principal addresses diversity, addresses the different types of learning that students are going to be needed inside the classroom. As an expert in the area of learning and evaluation, what might Ismail, the technical coordinator, do to integrate and create harmony out of the differences of opinion among the teachers? Explain research best practices. He can do that, work with teachers and understand the different research best practices that are out there. Help teachers with differentiated instruction plans and ensure implementation of those. Schedule vertical PLC meetings. Provide opportunities for teachers to observe each other, with him facilitating the observations. Meet with principal regularly so they are aware of progress and or adjustments that need to be made. What actions might Sylvia take with the families of the children in question in order to learn and share the achievements and experiences they have observed among the children? Again, continue to have those parent-teacher conferences, increase frequent communication with parents, student-led conferences, and then just continuous professional development of those research practices with the parents. And we looked at the 4 ethical paradigms. When you think about justice, that's promoting fairness, equity, and justice for all students. Principal just needs to know all the laws and policies as it refers to all students, including EC students, and especially following the IDEA. In regards to care, relationships, collaboration, shared decision-making, the principal must listen to all stakeholders, including teachers, parents, administrative staff, etc., as it pertains to school climate and the well-being for all. As you look at critique, know the laws to make decisions, principal must be mindful of all sides to be able to ensure equitable education is received by all students. And then profession, principal just have the best interest for all students, must keep professionalism in the forefront when making decisions and dealing with all parties involved. And that concludes our presentation.
Excellent. Excellent. Dr. Sane?
Well, y'all just made me really happy by putting the MTSS triangle in there.
Yes.
So
I was going to say that. You beat me to it. Okay. You stole my thunder.
So, in North Carolina, MTSS is legislated. It is not an option. It is a requirement. In South Carolina, it's not exactly legislated, but it is a suggested framework. But give it 2 or 3 years, and South Carolina will have it in some sort of policy. That is the perfect way to explain how we differentiate services for all students in public education. It's the perfect channel to go through when you're talking to parents about that, because it's for all students, EC students included. And that's a misconception, is that EC students don't have to be in any type of tiered framework. They are still students. It's all students. So kudos to you guys for doing that. And then I just wanted to go back to you. You talked a little bit, Ruby, specifically about action plans, and action plans are essential. I think that a lot of times we as leaders shy away from them because we don't want to do all the work that's involved. But when we think about things like this and teachers who are not following our expectations, that is how we hold them accountable. And it is a lot of work, but it's essential. And one of the things that I want you to keep in mind is that with your administrative team, when you're doing observations and when you're doing action plans, what makes an action plan not sustainable or not doesn't have the backing of a court is when you all three have different perspectives. Or you have all 3 administrators or 2 administrators have different interpretations of evaluation rubrics. For example, you have you and your assistant principal talk about this one teacher. You think that she's not being ethical, so you go in and do an observation. You mark her as him as improving or developing. And then the other assistant principal or administrator goes in and marks them accomplished or distinguished. Okay, so then you have this conflict, and that does not help you with the accountability piece. So action plans, again, I'm so glad you brought up MTSS and action plans because they're essential, but you just got to make sure that we're following through on those things and being consistent with our message, because you're an admin team for a reason.
Exactly right. Dr. Sane, have you got to leave us now?
I do. I've got, they're going to board in like 7 minutes. So
all right.
I apologize.
This, Dr. Sane, we thank you for being with us this semester. Your expertise. He's the traveling expert all over the world now. You know what happened? They started a little bit and they found out how good he was. Now they send him all over the world. So, but we're thankful that you were with us. It's really helpful to us that we need an expert practitioner. It's been a day or two since I've been in school. So,
well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Best of luck to all of you. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Our last group tonight, and then I'll do the benediction after that. I can already hear Just As I Am playing in the background for all you Baptists in the group.
All right, good evening. So to start with the case review, the parents of students in class 3B were concerned that their children are not receiving an adequate education because of the attention given to the special needs of a group of students. The parents met with the principal to share their concerns. The principal spoke with the teacher about the parents' concerns. A specialist on campus collected the thoughts of other teachers on campus about inclusion. Grade level teams had differing perspectives about inclusion practices on campus. The principal plans to meet with the teachers to provide guidance and clarity on inclusion practices.
All right, so question 1, how might the principal approach this in future meetings with her teachers? Is it necessary to choose one approach over the other? And I think Zach will take this.
Yes, ma'am. So when our team met, we felt like obviously the principal was somewhat blindsided, because had she done classroom observations, she would have known this was an issue and the parents would have never brought it to her attention. We felt like the principal needed to review the IDA requirements and related services with staff, and also review what cooperative learning best practices are, because kids helping kids is not cooperative learning. And then the master schedule needs to be aligned with the needs of all populations. Either specialists need to push in or pull out depending on whatever the IEP states. And then what is the path that Eugenia should take? She needs to remind staff to always follow the IEP, remind staff that all students, even those who receive EC services, receive core instruction from general ed teachers in addition to support from specialists. So that's really where the MTSS framework comes in. And a lot of people fail to remember that MTSS is a framework for school improvement. So it's always core instruction and then whatever additional services are provided to students. So providing all students is the responsibility of core teachers. The principal needs to complete classrooms observations routinely. Again, she would have been aware of what was going on our campus had she been visible in those classrooms. And also provide professional learning on inclusion best practices and supports for students.
So question 3, is one point of view more correct than the other? Why? We didn't think one was more correct. The school needs to have a consistent expectation on how they will use the inclusion model. Inclusion mainstreaming has a place in the school. It depends on the student's IEP. Inclusion model should include an inclusion teacher or interventionist. An inclusion teacher should support the teacher and students. The general education teacher is responsible for the instruction of all students. All support for students that are in the inclusion model should come from teachers, not the students. The curriculum should be taught to all students with supports used as defined by the IEP. What kind of collaboration from the children's families might the principal and the teachers propose in order to improve the inclusive education program, encourage and appreciation for diversity, and stimulate learning for all students at the school? The principal could include a message pertaining to inclusion and diversity in a newsletter. The school can use parent nights to provide the stakeholders with information pertaining to the inclusion model. But before this happens, the school needs to be on one accord on how inclusion looks at the school. To stimulate the learning for all students, the principal needs to provide professional development for her teachers. She needs to complete observations and provide feedback to teachers to change the instruction at the school.
Okay, and then looking at what Ishmael can do in order to integrate and create harmony out of the differences in opinion among the teachers. He can work with teachers during professional development time and or PLC times to help them learn how to effectively use technology and assessment systems in the classroom in order to utilize best practices in teaching and then tailor quality instruction for all of the students. I did note that he really shouldn't be the lead person on creating harmony in the differences in opinions of the teacher. He can be supporting the school-wide goals for improvement and supporting the principal's efforts to remediate the issues, but he really shouldn't be the first one doing it. That's really the principal's job. Okay. Next slide, Leon. Okay, so then for question 6, what actions might Sylvia take with the families? So she really should have regular and ongoing communication with the parents of all of her students. This shouldn't be the first time that she's hearing about the concerns either. That way, everybody is on the same page about the students' educational progress and how they're doing, if there were concerns, or even just celebrating, the progress that they're making. And she should take steps to engage with all of the families of the students individually, like having teacher and parent conferences, or like a phone call to check in, or even like daily check-ins, little notes that get sent home. During those times, she should be prepared to share strengths and achievements for the students, and then also expressing any of the concerns and getting feedback from the parents about any comments or concerns that they have. And then after the principal and Sylvia have worked out the issues of what the best practices and instruction should be in the classroom, including the appropriate application of inclusion in her classroom, she could inform the parents of some of the changes that are going to be made to her instructional approach. Because obviously we've all agreed that there is some changes that need to happen. So that's something that she can communicate with the parents once those changes are being implemented. Okay, so then the paradigm of ethics for justice. Looking at the teacher, her instructional practices were not fair, equitable, or just. Her instructional practices then reflect back on the principal because she wasn't serving properly as the instructional leader and wasn't aware of what was going on in the classrooms. With care, I think the teacher really did care about the children's educational success, but her application wasn't properly executed. She really thought that what she was doing was helpful, but she didn't really seem to appear to have good relationships or connections with the parents of her students, and the parents or the principal didn't really appear to have a good relationship with her teachers, especially that specific teacher. In that meeting, if the principal had a good relationship with her, that conversation probably would have went a little bit different than the not positive interaction that it was. And she didn't really appear to have very good collaboration with her team. She chose to delegate work to others when it wasn't appropriate instead of using her team in the appropriate manner. And then with critique, the human rights of the students in the class were not being upheld by the teacher or by the principal. As we talked about, they weren't getting that equitable education as they were had the legal rights to. Then profession, the principal was not fulfilling her professional duties to ensure that the best practices of instruction were being upheld in the classrooms, and she wasn't ensuring that the best interests of all the students were being considered.
So reflecting back on the case study, providing professional development on inclusion to the staff may have helped keep teachers on the same page when teaching the inclusion model. It is important for the school leader to do observations to ensure they know what instruction looks like across the school. and leadership needs to know what's going on in their school as well. That concludes our presentation.
Excellent. If you'll stop your share. Now, a couple of points to make from that one. I love the notion here. I told you we were going to start out this semester with a case where the teacher was completely in the wrong. Now, Kathleen just made a great point. This teacher was doing a bad thing, but she wasn't intentionally harming kids. It wasn't negligent. This is the principal's fault in this one completely. Wasn't monitoring, wasn't helping, wasn't supporting. Now, I think about medicine a lot of years ago when doctors, they were trying to help people, but they didn't know the right way to do it. And they weren't washing their hands and doing a sterile environment. They were killing more people than they were helping. Think of it this way. That's kind of a good metaphor for this. This teacher wanted to help those kids, but she was doing more harm than good. But that was because she didn't know any better. That's the principal's fault. That's not her fault. That's the principal's fault. So this one is that one. And the other one is, as Dion said, got to get everybody on the same page before you start bringing parents in to see what you got. Again, you better have a center stage act before you get on center stage. Let me share my screen. I want to do a kind of a wrap up for the summer. Again, I appreciate y'all being better students than I am instructor. It's been great. Dr. Sain's been a big help. Let me see what right here I'm looking for. This is a student who's just a semester ahead of y'all. She's finishing this summer. And she said, I've grown a tremendous amount throughout this program. I've always been an organized person, but now I know how to prioritize tasks based on the need and timelines. I've had to focus on creating a work-school life balance for myself during this program in order to not become so overwhelmed by everything. I've also learned that everything doesn't have to be perfect. If I had more time to work on everything, it could be, but I had a lot of tasks to do throughout those 3 aspects of my life, and more time wasn't something I had. So I had to let go of my perfectionist tendencies. I told you when we started this semester that we were going to work under the concept of gradual release, that I was going to shift more of the responsibility to you, and that we could all do better if we had more time. We needed to figure out what was important. You know, I wanted all of you to make 4s on everything you turned into task stream, but if we didn't have enough time, we didn't have enough time. We had to understand that sometimes we just have to do what we can do and we have to move on. That's it. You know, I've got a doctoral student right now who's doing a dissertation on principal self-care. And that's a big part of it. They're burning themselves out because they try to do everything to the 1000%. You got to know what's important. And then you got to do some things just good enough, but you've got to find that balance. The whole notion of gradual release is we shift more responsibility to you for the quality of your work. If you want great, then you got to be willing to sacrifice something else. You know, you're responsible for your content, for following directions. These are the kinds of things that will help you to grow in your leadership. If I do it for you always, then I've not done my job. My job this semester was to change your lens, get you looking from a perspective of an administrator on legal and the law, finance, get you to understand that you need to step up. We also made sure that, you know, we had takeaways on everything we did. There was a reason. You needed to learn to work on your time management. Can't have all the time you want. See the big picture. Understand your administrative responsibilities. That we did evidences 3 and 4, OMA and SKIP, that are all part of building that school improvement plan. The APSEL was your instructional piece. The APTEL was your human resources. Your OMA was building your schedule, a legal schedule. I told you, we weren't going to teach you how to build a schedule this summer. We're going to teach you how to build a legal schedule. And then the SKIP is how to involve your parents and make sure they know the programs that you're doing. Next, you're going to work on the CAP. Some of you have already started on that. My shell will be open if you want to work. Just email me because my dashboard's quit. But if you put something in the CAP in my shell, if it stays open, I'll work with you on that. But that's going to be, we're now eventually going to get around to trying to facilitate teachers more. I told you we get to that. It's not that we hate teachers. Instruction comes first, working with personnel, getting that master schedule so that we're legal. in that budget, and then which supports that master schedule. And then, you know, bringing in those stakeholders. Now we're going to work on next semester. You're going to move to the cap. You're going to work on trying to make teachers, empower them, decision making, working conditions for them. You're trying to make that better. But again, instruction comes first because we're here to teach kids. You have to understand that. We had an expert practitioner with us this semester on law and exceptional children. And so I hope that you got something out of the course. You know, we have a particular way that we do this. As I told you, next semester, we're going to work on you. Next semester is about learning the standards, learning your leadership style, knowing your blind spots. We're going to work on you next semester. You know, we particularly set it up this way that we start out with the most important, which is instruction, and we work through the evidences. And again, they mirror the exact process of building a school improvement plan. And somebody referenced 288 tonight. That's one of the laws that you have to follow. Every year, you have to produce a budget and a school improvement plan. That's what we worked on this semester. And so you're going to work on that. But it's just like when my doctoral students finally defend their final dissertation and they breathe that sigh of relief that's been years in the making. What I tell them at that point is what I'm going to tell you, that hopefully at the end of next semester, when you finish up your leadership semester and working on yourself, the real project all along was you. It wasn't a piece of paper. It wasn't a portfolio. It wasn't a dissertation. The real project the whole way through this program is you, to develop you. I told you, we've got plenty of average and below average administrators. We want you to be great. Kids deserve great. Teachers deserve great administrators. So the real project all along has been you. And that's why we work on the notion of gradual release. I've had a great time this summer. I look forward to these classes more than you know. How sad is my life, but this is the highlight of my week. It's just like Jackson Brown said. You know, the only time that seems too short is the time that we get to play. This is that time for me. I hope that you've enjoyed it. I hope that you've gotten something out of it. Again, I will see you next time on the second Monday of the fall semester on August 28th, Monday at 7 o'clock, and I'll go over all of the requirements that you'll have so that we make sure that you graduate in December. And on the 15th, you get to come and see me, and we get to celebrate. You get to, you know, get your hood and go through the pomp and circumstance of the ceremony. It's a big thing at Garden Web. You don't want to miss it. So without any further, we actually got through 20 minutes early. Look at us. I'll see you again in August. Everybody have a good break. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank you, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.